Yes, team, and welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today's guest is Callum. He's the founder of GraphFit. I've worked with Callum for coming up for 2 years now with him and his team. And if you're here to learn about the psychology of branding, we've actually already shot that podcast. It was one of the first podcasts we ever shot here on the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Yesterday, we're shooting this one here from Birmingham. Yesterday, we were both speaking at Ollie Carson's Supercharged event, and that was your first ever speaking gig, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and the podcast that you mentioned was actually first ever podcast as well.
What's next?
So
What's next?
God, I don't know.
We'll find something else.
The ultimate goal.
TV, mate. We've got to do
Yeah,
TV.
yeah. I think I was always a bit nervous about in-person talking, like sort of in events and stuff. But I think I've always loved the idea of doing a TED Talk. I think one day I'll have something useful enough to talk about at TED Talk. That'd be a bit of a dream. But
Love that. Well, look, mate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So let's go back to where we first started. When I first started to work with GraphFit, I actually asked them if they could make me a website, and you guys were at the time were a nightmare to get hold of. I think I got stuck in your DMs. I think I followed you up twice.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to test their integrity as well. So they said, sorry, mate, we've got a waiting list for websites. And I said, okay, well, look, can I pay a bonus to move up to the top of the list? And I was going to say, all right, if the answer is yes, I'm going to get what I need, but I will kind of already know that from a financial perspective, that's how it's going to work. And you said, sorry, mate, we got to honor our commitments. And I really respected that. And I said, okay, well, we'll work with what we've got. So I actually got COVID, and I was locked in a room, and I rebuilt the new one. I built the first one, and then I rebuilt the new one the second time round. And then I can't remember how it happened. I probably messaged you again, or maybe you messaged me, and I was like, all right, let's get this done. And then here we are.
Yeah, I think at the time I remember the exact conversation on Instagram actually. And I think as a business, we were probably at a time that response of saying, no, actually, we're really full was probably quite a big move for me to say that. As probably one of either the first or one of the first times I would probably have ever actually managed to say that, instead of going yes, and then like going fuck, or not, whatever. So we were quite immature as a business then, I think. So that was probably the right move. And then I think by the time we actually ended up working together, I think you probably had a better idea of where TMP was going, because it was definitely the start of TMP, wasn't it? And I think we probably then had the sort of systems in the team to actually be able to deliver things at scale. So I think it was probably a good move.
Yeah, well, TMP was only born January 2021, was when I made the Canva logo. The TMP is made on Canva. And as a brand, really, it was 6 months into that, because I now have two businesses, right? I've got TMP, which is the world's fastest growing mindset service dedicated to fitness entrepreneurs. And then I've got Kyran Consulting. And that's really where I work with high net worth individuals. So guys that are literally scaling their companies from 180 people to 1,800 staff in 18 months. One guy's worth $1 billion. Another one got an organization of 1,000 people. Another one is a professional athlete. So it's a different gig. And I think I was trying to create a brand for everyone, which was Total Mental Performance. But I started to realize we picked up a lot of influence in the coaching space. A hell of a lot, speaking at Adam Haley's Inner Circle event, then being invited to speak at a number of different other mentorships. And next thing you know, I was fully booked within. I was already approaching fully booked, but I was more thinking I'm just a performance coach. I just sort of work on my own. And I got absolutely flooded with inquiries, and I was fully booked. So then I hired Kate, Dr. Kate Blackford. She's got a PhD in organizational psychology. So then it was just me and her, and organically it's just really grown just on client results, and that was pretty much the story. And then I came to you and I was like, right, we need to grow our marketing up a little bit, because if you looked at our page, we were using like stock photos. They were using stock pictures. The website, it looked professional, but it didn't scream that. The decision to split my two brands out was really, it was actually my mentor Ron, who you met at the TMP lock-in event. He said, well, just split those out, because you can't create a brand for everyone. And we are now one of the leading brands in the world for coaching coaches, educators, and entrepreneurs on mental performance. And I guess that's really the journey that we've been on, and you guys have been helping us on that.
Yeah, I think we as a business, I think we're probably in parallel most of the journey. I think so. I started GraphFit in, I think it was July 2019. I think. sort of crossover with different things and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And I think it took me a bit of time to figure out what graph it was, what the message was. It wasn't. I didn't want it to just be a graph design service. That to me wasn't. The goal wasn't big enough to be a graph design service. I wanted it to be bigger than that. So I think by the time TMP was born, we've probably in parallel sort of grown at similar things, which means we've had similar problems at similar times, which we've talked about a lot. I think going back to the brand, I remember a conversation when we first started working together, like consistently on Studio Unlimited, and I remember us having a conversation about what makes a brand basic and what makes a brand clean. And I think that was the biggest turning point for the TMP brand. I think when I'm pretty sure you probably imagined that when we started working together, I would go, "Oh, you need a new logo." But yeah, it worked really well. We could make it work and stuff. I liked the meaning behind the colours. But I think we went back and forth a lot at the start around social templates and assets and stuff, where I had a different idea of what was minimal than you did. And we sort of had to compromise on that, didn't we? And we was like, everything's white. And I'm like, it can be, but with the right fonts, or else it looks basic. And then we sort of added the backgrounds in and stuff like that. And that's where the creative side of thing came in.
Yeah, and those colours, the red and the blue, for anyone that doesn't know, red is protection, blue is growth. So if you look at, say, traditional therapy, that's very much coping mechanisms, mental health, how do we just have people feeling okay? If you look at life coaching and performance coaching, that's very much just how good can you feel? And the red and the protection state and therapy is often in the past, whereas the more life coachy performance coaching is more based on the future. And this is where we create that fusion of both.
Yeah.
For us, we're all qualified therapists, but then also NLP practitioners, and we have years of experience within business. So what that means is we bridge the gap between, for an entrepreneur and for a coach, well, here is how your past is holding you back, but then also here are the things that you need to let go of in order to create a much better future. And where we bridge that gap, the idea is it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. When you come to TMP, you'll be somewhere on the red or you'll be somewhere in the blue. And our job is to move you along that scale from left red to blue right as much as we can. And that was really important that we do that. Even in the studio right now, we've got red and blue lights happening in here. And color is just, when you think about emotions, you don't think color. But actually, when you think about certain states, like we'll do this right now, think about a time when you had flow state. You think of a time recently. Where in your body did you feel that flow state? You're going to point. Or was it everywhere?
Yeah, probably everywhere. I tend to feel like it's a whole sort of transformation when I'm feeling comfortable, when I'm in the flow.
Was it heavy or was it light? That feeling?
Light.
Pressure or no pressure?
Yeah, a bit of pressure.
Hot or cold?
Lukewarm. It's not. I don't think it's either or.
Yeah.
I would probably relate hot or cold to something negative. Generally, if you're in a flow state, then generally you're quite happy, you're comfortable, and so I would say sort of in the middle, just happy enough.
What color is that? That feeling?
White.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So
feelings and colors are deeply interlinked. And you can, any state, if you ask us about guilt, shame, happiness, sadness, whenever you ask a client and you get them to go through that, what we did there was we put boxes around that emotion. So we've identified flow state, it's everywhere. We understand there's a little bit of light pressure and it's white, that's space. So you can start to leverage emotion, you can start to leverage thoughts, feelings based on colors. So that's why for us, we can be a little bit nicky-pickety sometimes. It's like, yeah, but it's not quite it, because we're thinking on a psychological level. Another reason why we haven't changed the TMP logo is if you think about McDonald's and those arches, they have spent billions on association of the psychological arches. For example, when you are in a football stadium and you see McDonald's used to sponsor all of the football, or you know how much beer companies pay to put their beers in the stadiums?
Well, there was actually, I looked at one, was it the Shell logo? And I think I was looking at, you look at some logos, like you look at McDonald's logo or whatever, and you think, you should just bring it back to basics all the time.
Yeah.
Like, they're so simple.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I'd look at it, and I'm sure it's the Shell logo, which is literally a shell.
Yeah.
and like they paid like, I'm sure it was like, don't quote me on it, I'm sure it was like 50K or something for it to be designed or marketed or whatever from the start. I was just thinking, first of all, it's up with prices.
Mm.
Is that charging 50K for logo design? But secondly, how you can just sort of bring it back to basics, like McDonald's the golden arches, like the
Yeah.
association to that, the TMP where you've got, it says TMP
It's in your
and
face.
it's black and
Bold.
white,
It's
like
bold, isn't
simple.
it?
Mm.
So you make those associations with certain colours and certain feelings. So part of the psychology of say Heineken in lots of sports stadiums, they put loads of money to be there because when you see your team win in the last minute, the last 5 minutes of the game, they score a 30-yard screamer, and you're like,
The
yeah, and you've
associations
got
to
the
that,
taste
yeah.
of Heineken in your mouth.
Mm.
That's the association. So for us, when we're looking at a brand, it was very thought out, very natural. It happened in minutes, but at the same time, as soon as I had the idea, okay, well, how did I explore that? It's it's the psychology behind it. What do you want? Total, all of it. Performance across not just personal but professional,
Mm.
and making sure everything's working. Mental, we start with the mind. That's what we do. We coach your mind, and finally performance to help you perform. Dean, our next guest that's coming on, and a good client of mine, the first call he had, he said, "Your brand spoke to me." I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Total mental performance. I don't know how you guys do that, but I want that. That's what I
Mm.
want. That's what I'm here for." And I think,
I think total's quite a powerful word. I think like total. I use the word complete quite a lot,
Mm.
like to describe a process or something that's fulfilling. It's complete. And I think total probably does the same thing. If something's total, it's maxed out. It's the most you can do. It's the highest quality. It sort of speaks that language. So I think that's probably a standout word. And the fact it's the first word.
yeah,
And then mental. I think obviously we're as a sort of world we're trying to talk about mental issues a lot more than we used to and stuff. So it's still quite new to have a brand that's got the word mental in it. Is
Mm.
still
it's a
quite
bit
new.
mental.
Yeah, it's a bit mental. Yeah, I like that. Spin on it. But I think it's still quite new. So I think that them two words are quite triggering. And then performance is again like it's all three words. Performance is sort of a descriptive word of something that is positive, that's good, that's elite, that's at the top level. So you put them three words together, and it's quite striking.
Yeah. And our clients are ambitious. They want to get to the next level. They're often athletes, former athletes, entrepreneurs, they're coaches, they're ambitious, they want to grow. So for us, we don't really coach coasters. Our clients are there to win. They're there to dominate their fields, and they want to go and do that. But the downside of that is there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure, there's often a lot of self-worth issues, and they often fall into the trap of thinking the only way to be successful is to be anxious and scared or
Mm.
afraid or insecure, but because that's the only model that they've used, that's the only fuel that they've used in order to generate success. So that's where I think we kind of hit that balance of there is a mental part, there is a therapeutic part of what we do, but we look at the lens through how does this person perform. A therapist is thinking, how do I just get them healthy?
Mm.
The metaphor that I use is a Gen Pop PT client that's trying to lose a few pounds to have a bit more energy to play with the kids. Well, you got a world class athlete that wants to go and win their field.
Yeah.
They want to go and win medals. You wouldn't have a Gen Pop PT. You would have a performance coach, a strength and conditioning coach, an expert in that field, and that's where we sit, and that's what we do.
Mm.
On the word total, for me, it's not enough to just only be one dimensional insofar as I'm very, very confident at work. If I'm not confident in my personal life, that's not helpful.
Mm.
That just leaves me as one dimension. Same with the team at TMP. I want them to be engaged in their work. I want them to be engaged at home. And if their work is putting pressure on their home life, then I want to make sure, okay, well, how can we facilitate that? And when it comes to our brand values, we have three: be water, we adapt, we create, we deliver. Be honor, do everything with transparency, do everything with just being upfront, and be love. There's another human being at the end of the phone, and I think a lot of people forget that sometimes. And for us, it's not just a name or it's not just a logo, but like TMP is a feeling, it's a movement. Like our clients are deeply loyal, they're deeply fanatical because of the level of growth that they've been able to achieve and the results that they've achieved. So for us, we are really, really protective of that, and we actually slow down our growth because we've got more demand than we have fulfillment at the moment. I need more boots on the ground. but we will happily slow down to find the right boots on the ground than just flooding it with sessions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think like that's probably something we spoke about last night, wasn't it? I think we're quite similar in that way. I think we're both probably focus on quality a lot, and that can be really rewarding when it pays off, and it can be really damaging to the heart when it doesn't, and you feel like things might get missed, or it's just part of business at the end of the day. But you take it personal. You take it very, very personal when things don't work out, or then they're just not quite the way you want it to be. I think we're probably similar in that way. And we've done something similar to that. We've took our time to figure out what graph it is. What is it supposed to be when it grows up, when it matures. So I think we're at a real sort of turning point in the business now, where I feel like the maturity of the business is scaled up massively over the past couple of months, and that means that we now understand what it is. So then when you think back and you think, well, if you was to just let's say 2 years ago, and you just punched the fuck it button and went, right, we're going big. The graphic wasn't supposed to be like it was 2 years ago. That's not the business I wanted to scale. And imagine getting to that point now, 2 years later, and going, should have done that differently. Or I'm now running a brand that I don't quite resonate with, or I've got people in the business that don't really fit the the ethos or the culture. So I think that's really important. We talk about it all the time, don't we, about the fitness industry. It's always just go, go, go. And while that is helpful in a lot of areas, it's the reason why the fitness industry is so lucrative. It's the reason why so many people can become very wealthy in the fitness industry. It's also can be damaging used in the wrong way, or at the wrong time. So I think it's important for fitness businesses to slow down from time to time, or at least bring in some kind of like phasing model. Something we found useful is sort of putting your foot on the gas and going, right, okay, from this point to this point, we're going to just go ham, just go as hard as we can. And then you go, at the end of that journey, some things are going to be broken, whether it's processes, whether it's team members' happiness, like whatever it may be. And you've got to then have a period of respite where you go, okay, let's fix them things. And then when they're fixed, you go, right, we're going again. And that sort of phase, that's been really helpful for us.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly where we were at. I was joking about it in my talk yesterday, the word SOP. SOPs.
By the way, for anyone listening, I've heard Kyran say SOP probably 55 times in the last 24 hours.
It's on my mind. So essentially, we've hit a bit of a growth spurt. And where we've hit a bit of a growth spurt, the Chinese rules of freeze. You scale up and then all your systems break. So then you've got to get to the next level and then your systems break. We're at a place now where our systems are breaking, which is a good thing. Good news is client delivery is always solid because my team are very bright, they're very intelligent, and they just know what to do. So it's never the front end service. It's more the back end processes of, right, well, how do we get content out? Or for now, I want to hire 1, 2, maybe 3 coaches in the next 3 to 5 months potentially. I don't have the systems to onboard them in a proper way. With Kate, with Dan, with Brendan. Brendan came through me and we trained him up. Dan and Kate were already fully trained. They've also been around TMP for a long time, so they kind of slotted in. But when you're actually putting out, right, we're going headhunting and we're going to try and
bring
find
somebody in to the environment. It's
a different ball game. So for us now, it's the back end, right? Okay, if I am going to hire somebody on top of the team that we've got, what does that look like? How does that feel? All the technology. There's so many different things you got to get people set up on, and there's so many different processes. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think what happens is coaches and particularly fitness businesses can chase growth because that's all that. Something I spoke about yesterday was business founder fit. You have to have the right business for the right founder. Sometimes the business grows faster than the founder's ready for. So the founder might be a little bit more immature than where the business is at. So as a result, that immaturity of warrior, push, grow, when actually that business needs the founder to grow up. And that might not necessarily just be on a systems or a knowledge level. It might be on an emotional level. They need to let go. I was speaking to one coach yesterday, and he said, look, we're at multi 6 figures, and I believe we could take this to 7 figures, but I'm holding us back. And I said, tell me more. And he's like, a bit of a control freak. And I don't think I can bring other people in to actually manage them without micromanage them or being uncomfortable or whatever. And I said, okay, well, when we talk about business founder fit, at the minute your business is further ahead than you are. So you've either got to make a decision, which is stay here. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're happy and that gives you a lifestyle and allows you to do the things you want out of life, you've nailed it. You've won. Like, maintain that, own that. But if you are growth orientated, or you do want to go to a next level, perhaps you've just got a bit stagnant, a bit bored, and you want to go to that next league, you kind of got to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of coaches in the fitness industry, perhaps on a know what to do and implementation level. They're quite mature. They work hard. A lot of people don't work hard. They know how to really, really push. But on an emotional level, on a leadership level, and on a business level, they're much less experienced. So they don't really know. They just know, I just keep working as hard as I can. And nothing beats hard work. But for our clients, everyone works. That's like a standard.
Yeah,
we don't
have expected.
We don't have lazy clients.
No.
Our clients are ambitious. So when somebody comes in and says, I work hard, I'm like, cool. I've got loads of other clients that work hard. That's normal. If anything, that's probably the problem. Because if you're working too hard and you're doing that out of trauma and fear and self-worth, then there's only so long that you can really do that.
Yeah.
But that's where having good people around you in your network, whether they're sparring partners, whether they're mentors, to hold up that mirror and go, hey, mate, have a look at this, or have you thought about that? It's so important.
Yeah, I think I've been lucky in having a lot of support, really. Sort of, I guess the journey that I've been on, I've always had support in the team, family, whatever. I think the biggest thing that I struggled with for a long time was graphic Callum, business Callum was different to Callum at home. It was two different people, because I was younger and I was probably immature. I've always been mature, but in terms of business, I was probably immature in how they sort of slotted in to each other. So going back to when I obviously first started Graphic, you would be with lots of different circles of people, because I was younger, I was like 21 or whatever. So you're still sort of in that time of your life where you've got different circles of people that so you're still speaking to like school friends on and off. You've got family friends. You've got, for me, it was the rugby lads. You've got new people that you've met. You've got work people. You've then got friends of friends. I've always been one that's always been drawn to older people. So my friends, generally all the people I get along with are always older, always older. And so you find yourself like having such a multitude of different conversations where you're using different languages. Lucy, if Lucy listens to this, she probably wouldn't. But if she listens to this, like, she always says to me, like, why are you using that word? You don't use that word. And I don't think she said it for a while now, and that's probably a sign of them two things coming to one. So like the business Callum and the personal Callum sort of join in, and now it's just Callum, and business is now my life. And I struggled with that for a long time, because it was kind of like I was always good at mixing with different people, like through school and stuff. I would be with the rugby lads, and if I seen somebody, and this was later in school, I was a bit of a knobhead at the start of school, to be quite honest, probably a different story. But if I seen a lad and he looked like unconfident, or he had no friends or whatever, I'll just go up to him. I'll go, hi mate, how you doing? Like, I will just speak to anybody, and that can be quite confusing. Like, how do you speak to that person? What situation we're in now? How can I relate to that person? Always try to relate to people, and it's just a whole concoction of just different people. And you're not intentionally trying to be somebody else, or you're not trying to redevelop yourself all the time. You just resonate with people, and you don't know which one you are. And you're not supposed to at the age of 21. Like, there'll be a lot of coaches that might listen to this who are like 21. That's such a young age. Like, I'm 26 now, and I'm still like in the infancies of business, in the infancies of anything that I'm going to learn. I'm always going to be learning. And you think, God, when I was 21, like, what are you supposed to know? You're not supposed to. I wasn't supposed to know which Callum I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the goal, going back to sort of the original point, the goal was to bring them two things together. Like, even something as fickle as I had like a personal Instagram that obviously I'd done with rugby pictures on, and like on friends from school and stuff like that, and I never posted anything on that, or I didn't want people from Graphic or customers to see that, because it was two different people. They would be speaking to Callum Monday to Friday, business Callum, and then I didn't want them to go over and see the last 5 years of my life, because I was young and things have changed. And a sort of visual representation of that was then sort of looking at that, and again, it's a really fickle thing to think about, but looking at that Instagram page and going, well, and I kind of know who I am now. Like this business Callum and personal Callum are one thing now. So let's just open it up. This is Lucy. This is my dog. This is what I do on a weekend, and just show that sort of personal side. And it just gives you so much more clarity. And I think a lot of the confusion then just slowly disappears. Don't need to think about how I'm speaking to people. I don't need to think about, do you use that language that with that person. I just see yesterday, like for when we post content from that talk, I'm just me. Yeah. Like I will stand in front of 80, 90 people, where it was yesterday, and talk like I'm stood in front of the lads and talking. Like I don't give a shit anymore. And that sort of clarity in your mind just gives you so much more confidence. You're not worried about anything. You're not worried about, oh, I'm speaking differently to this person this time, or like, are they going to think I'm too young, or they think I'm too old? Like Sam tells me all the time now I'm old, but I'm too old. Like there's just so many things, and you don't have to think about any of it anymore. It's like sort of the stereotype of like somebody who lies, and you've got to always remember your lies because you're going to get caught out. You're going to lie to somebody, and then you're going to forget about it, and then next minute they remember and you don't, and it's that same thing.
That's what we're talking about.
That was a big battle for me.
I'm talking about authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to being authentic, it is just about being you and not being afraid and not having shame or feeling like you have to hold yourself back. I really resonate with being the young guy in the room, and I also connect with, I've always had mentors that are in their 50s and 60s from when I was 15, 16. I used to go invite me out, and I'd be like, okay, how does this work? How does that work? When I was 7, I went to the Peter Jones Academy. I was 16 and everyone was 18. I technically shouldn't have got in, but legally they could let me in, and I sent some letters up to Peter Jones himself to say, will you let me in? And they let me in, and I was always around that. 17, I was pitching, 17, 18, I was pitching guys that were in their 50s and 60s, like university principals, college principals. I was selling a virtual reality simulator into university, and I was always like, I'd turn up to the meeting, my director would have to drive me because I couldn't drive, and he'd come along and they'd shake, like, Steve was my Steve Purnell, he was my sales manager at the time. Gareth Hawkins, still a mentor of mine, he was a sales director, worked his way up to CEO, bought six businesses, then sold that business, and now that's what he does. And then the CEO above him, Adrian, he was in his 50s. They'd all take me to the meetings, and I'd instantly go and shake their hands. They'd be like, Kyran. I'd be like, that's me. Me.
Yeah.
And so I really resonate with that. And if you're a young coach, that is probably a little bit further ahead than where they are. That's a good thing, because you're picking up valuable knowledge and experience, and that feeling of, like, should I lie about my age? Should I kind of keep it quiet? Should I be that imposter syndrome that can creep in? You're just doing your 10,000 hours, and that comes through. Something I said to you yesterday, he was wearing a GraphFit t-shirt, and I met the founder of Virtue Zone, one of the biggest Dubai and UAE registration companies. And when I met him, he invited me on the radio, and he was wearing a Virtue Zone shirt, and I turned up in a TMP shirt. And for me, I think to be truly authentic, you have to build a brand. If you're a founder, you have to build a brand that you're proud of. Yeah, and that's where you can kind of create that separation. And I think to operate out of the King CEO dashboard overview, you can't look at your business results as your self-worth. You have to have that disconnect, but you also need to be authentic and build a brand that you absolutely love, and then you back, and that you live and breathe. In my view, if you can't wear your own branded merch, you've got the wrong brand.
Yeah, without doubt. Like I do it. Lucy moans at me sometimes because I literally wear it on the weekends, jumpers. But we've actually got graphic socks as well. We have so many conversations about what people should and shouldn't wear in the office. The lads just wear whatever they want, but something's got to be branded. So if you're not going to put a graphic t-shirt on and you've got shorts on, you put graphic socks on. You've got to have something graphic. And I don't think we could probably do more. I think, but I think we're at the right sort of balance in branding where it doesn't look forced. Yeah. It's just natural. I'm wearing the t-shirt because I want to wear the t-shirt. I'm not wearing the t-shirt because I want to go, this is my company. I like the t-shirt. We've done lots of different t-shirts over times and stuff like that you, in work, it's uniform, it's your brand. But if you go to Tesco after work, people just think you might have just bought it. Yeah. If they don't know what graphic is or like whatever. That's I think there is a fine line. I think you can like overdo it. I think you can really make it look forced, which sort of, I guess, has the opposite effect from authenticity. It then looks like you've thought about it too much, and there's then a sort of like underlying reason why you're trying to push that into someone's face and stuff. You can go too far with it, but like you said, like I think everybody should just wear their brand. If you're not, then understand why you're not. And it probably does come down to something, either maybe something like what I mentioned before about the, like what I said, like the personal Callum, the business Callum were different. Maybe you sort of not ashamed, but maybe you've not made that merge yet, where you don't want to go somewhere in your work t-shirt because it seems weird. Maybe you've not made that connection, or maybe it's that you're not proud of your brand, or it's not what you want it to look like, and that's an easy fix.
Yeah, it is. For me, I have this balance where I'm deeply immersed within TMP, but I am not TMP. Sometimes when I meet people, they go, "Mr. TMP." I actually hate that. I actually absolutely hate that, because on an identity level, I am not TMP. TMP is its own organism. It's its own organization. It stands on its own 2 feet. That's not Kyran. That is total mental performance. So total mental performance is something that Kyran does and dedicates his life to. But Kyran also loves learning boxing. He's currently still learning with some Cuban fighters. Cuban boxers are like the Brazilians of football. They move completely differently. I boxed for 8 years and made it onto the national team, and I'm still a student, still learning. I'm like, how does this work? On top of that, I love going to the beach. I love being in the pool. I love being in the sun. Those things fascinate me. I just enjoy being outside and exploring. Business deeply fascinates me. That's why I still coach, CEOs, entrepreneurs outside of TMP in different industries, because I'm fascinated as to what they're up to. The emotional puzzles they're suffering is exactly the same as every human being, because our puzzles are the same that we have to solve. Ambitious minds, anyway. But just listening into their worlds and seeing what they're doing. So for me, if for whatever reason on a financial level, if I see a drop in revenue, it never bothers me, because I can have that separation, which is TMP's not me. It's just an organization. It's an organism. Whereas sometimes coaches, particularly if a coach is called coaching, Bob Smith coaching. I'm not knocking whoever Bob Smith is. There is a Bob Smith listening to this.
No, I am. That's a terrible name. If anyone's called Bob Smith out there, change your name.
But I think identity can get wrapped up in my identity is this business, and something that coaches get stuck in is like their monthly numbers, and it's like month. It's like revenue's here, and if it goes down, they really panic, or they start feeling not enough. They start feeling like a failure, but that's just noise.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why sort of large scale companies and corporates and stuff and all, as you learn your business acumen, that you have quarterly targets, and it's the idea of averages. So I think it was somebody yesterday, I can't remember who it was on about. It might have been you actually on about the stock market, or it might have been Dan maybe. And you're sort of like, if you play it one trade at a time when it's going like all the way up, all the way down, you're not going to be able to handle that. Your emotions can't handle it, and that's the reason why you have quarterly targets, because you take an average over the 3 months. You don't have to be, I'm doing 10k a month, and all of a sudden you do 9k a month, and you're like, oh, I'm not doing 10k. Like over the 3 months, you might do 11 a month, which means it's all the same.
That's it.
I'm sure Liam won't mind me sharing this. We've been on a bit of a journey, probably since Christmas, really. As Liam's come into the business, he's been part of the business from nearly the start, sort of like only the first 6 months I was kind of on my own. But for anybody that doesn't know, Liam was always sort of in the background because he had a really well-paid engineering job, and we quite simply didn't demand his skill set for the salary that he would have needed. So we agreed that he would come into the business full-time when we demanded his skill set, which is basically organisation, operational skills, systems, man management. Is quite similar to me in that. We're quite lucky that we have me and Liam that's pretty good at man management. And then that time came, but during that whole time that he wasn't at the forefront of the business, he wasn't, I guess, learning how to detach himself, like what you just said, sort of, he wasn't learning how you shouldn't be wrapped up in the daily numbers and the daily problems. And by no means am I perfect. I get emotionally triggered by a lot of stuff. I take things personal. But specifically around finances, we had an instance probably a couple of months ago. I can't remember what month it was. And it was our best month ever. And Liam was like up here. He was like sky high. It was just the best thing in the world. And it was for me. Like, of course it was. It was for me as well. But he woke up the next day, and he was like down here. He'd gone from being best month ever. You turn the clock into over midnight, and you go to the next month, you go, I've got to do it again.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, the numbers that you did last month don't matter. They're gone. You've got to do it again. And he really struggled with that. And I sort of felt good in myself about that, because I could pass on something that I'd learned over the 3 years that he wasn't at the forefront of the business. I don't get wrapped up in that. If we have the best month, it's great. I celebrate with the team, but it's the team's job. It's the team that have made that record month. It's not me.
Yeah.
Like, I might do sales calls or whatever, but I'm not doing the work that's generating that recurring revenue. So that I could pass on a little bit of something, and it comes back to your point of being wrapped up in the identity of the business. I was at first, because you kind of have to be for a certain period of time. It's built on your culture and your morals and what you want this thing to be. But you've got to be okay with knowing that it's going to be hard to detach yourself away, and you're going to have to do it at some point. So that's sort of the lesson I learned. And then, like I said, over that time when Liam wasn't at the forefront, I learned that. I learned that, we did like probably the best part of 2.5 years of record months every month. Every month was higher than the last. It just kept going and going and up. So I was just like, that's great. And then all of a sudden you have a month where you're really growing, you're really pushing, and you're needing systems to make these things work, and your numbers drop a little bit, and you go, and I probably at that point felt the same as what Liam had felt at that point. But then I understood it, and I was like, oh, it doesn't matter, because we've got it all. We've got to do it all again. And that's sort of like a journey we've been on. I think it's probably an important lesson, especially in the fitness industry. First of all, the identity. I do believe that when you're starting a a company like a fitness business, and you are intending to grow it, it's really important that it is built on your identity to begin with, and you are in a way wrapped in it, because it should be the business that you want to grow. You've got to be passionate for it. You're going to have that same passion when you've got 15 people, 20 people, 25 people working for you. But like I said, you've got to understand that it's going to be difficult to detach, and you're going to have to do it at some point.
Particularly if it's your first business. So for me, as soon as I decided, right, this is going to be bigger than just Kyran, the mental performance coach. This is going to become an organization now. I specifically, and if you look at my Instagram handle, which it won't always be me, once we've got the internal resource, that's actually just going to be the company account, and I'm going to go back to my personal brand.
Yeah.
But I launched at Total Mental Performance from day one. It was never my other account, Kyran Luis O'Neill. It was always Total Mental Performance from day one. And the reason I did that was psychologically I knew that if it was Kyran O'Neill Coaching, or if it was anything like that, if I was trying to build an organization under that name, I knew that I would wrap myself up in the numbers and the identity. So I had to create that split, so I can say, okay, Total Mental Performance is an organism and an organization that I own, but I can look at the numbers a little bit more objectively. It's not, here's Kyran O'Neill's personal performance.
And personal income and personal problems. And
exactly that. I completely outsourced it. I instantly become the first employee, and I just looked at it like that. And I hate the word employee. I really don't like it. A team member. Yeah. I'm the first team member, and I was like, right, okay. So that's where I get my salary from. But that I'm not the same as that. I never equated the business's revenue with my personal earnings. So they're different. They're completely different. They're two different things. And I think when you make that split, it becomes a lot easier for you to look at things a bit more objectively. Now, there's a lot of young coaches or people that haven't been self-employed or built a business before. So I think in that first couple of years, it's very emotionally turbulent. Yeah. I think business is a great personal development tool because it's so hard. Oh yeah, it's so hard.
You're like a rabbit in the headlights, and your weaknesses become weaker and your strengths become stronger. So you've got to be able to battle them off against each other.
Yeah, and a lot of people said, TMP's coming out of nowhere, but at the same, it has and it hasn't. Like for people that are qualified in therapy or life coaching or what we do, the speed at which we've traveled is very rare. It is. But at the same time, it's been built on 8 years as a boxer, which is a lot of fucking failure. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of performing in front of audiences. It's a lot of public wins and public failures. It's a lot of public stress and tension. And then a 6-year international software sales career. That's not easy either, because that is, me and Dan are shooting a podcast on it later. We're going to talk about that story and the parallels between psychology and coaching and sales and how it's all actually the same thing. But that gave me a 6-year head start of knowing you can break the record 1 month and then actually next month it all starts again, and actually the month after that it doesn't work out, and the emotional roller coaster. So I think you have to, when you're first starting out, I kind of did a lot of that when I was selling, that rejection, people saying no, feeling bad about selling something, feeling bad about putting prices up, feeling uncomfortable standing up in front of a room and speaking. I kind of got a lot of that out the way early. Understanding high performance technology businesses, and that's why I still have mentors from the technology worlds, because I don't want to get stuck in groupthink. Because if you get stuck and you get stagnant in the same industry, everybody thinks the same. And what does TMP do? It teaches you how to think differently. So all of that background and that experience gave me a series of frameworks and learnings and knowledge where it really allowed us to hockey stick a lot quicker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think we mentioned it yesterday, where I think Graphit and TMP and some other service providers are in. It's still quite new, isn't it? When you sort of look at the fitness industry as a supply chain, and you look at, who the client is. So you've obviously got the coaches, and then you look at the other service providers. You've got mentorships. You've got, I guess yours isn't a mentorship as such, but it's a service that a coach is going to buy. It's our service. It's it's graphics. It's web. It's technology. That's still quite new. Like historically, it's mentor, coach. There isn't really much in between, and we're in a unique position where we can find out what we want to do. There is no real framework for us. I don't think, like, there is no path that other service providers have walked, and we've got to walk that same path, and that means that business is going to act in that way, and it's can only grow to this point, or whatever. So we're in a unique position where we're sort of like forging that for all the other service providers, and there are going to be more service providers coming. Like you said, you've got sort of therapy and mental performance. You've got web and technology. You've got fitness specific videographers and photographers. You've got podcast people coming in. You've got just video editors. Like, you've got so many individual services that are coming in, and I think we're probably at the forefront of forging that path, like mentors have. On the flip side of that, I think it's also a cause of a lot of anxiety for coaches as well. So if you think of a coach and the options that they've got and the things they're getting pushed in the face every single day, it's a lot, and it's a lot of money that they're forking out for it as well. And we're one of them, you're one of them, mentorships are one of them. They're all operational costs. So then when you take a young coach that is probably, in more cases than not, earning money that he never earned before, probably double, triple what the mum and dad are earning, and they've got all these shiny things in front of them, and they're buying it, they're feeling anxious about it because they're not really sure whether they should be spending that money, or they're doing it out of fear or whatever. And then, you go back to the point before of, like, finances going up and down and peaks and troughs, and all of a sudden that creates more anxiety. It's a real sort of dangerous trap for coaches, and that might even sound counterproductive for me to say, because we're one of them service providers, but I'm confident in saying it because I know that people that use our service are happy with it, and they do need it. But I think it's also worth noting for any service providers that are coming into the industry or thinking of coming into the fitness industry, or if you're a coach and you're looking at operational costs and what you're spending money on, just be aware that if you don't control that side of things, then you will feel anxious in the next 12 months. You will feel guilt around money, even if you haven't got any inherent guilt around money. And that's a real, like, strong point for me. That's something that I think I want to sort of carry forward in the message, in my personal messaging, not necessarily the messaging of Graphit, but my personal messaging in doing things like this. That's what I want people to think about.
That's what we do financial checks with clients before they sign up, because for us there has to be a level of tension insofar as, wow, this is financially a stretch for me to go and do this program, but it can't be an overstretch and you get psychologically injured insofar as I don't feel financially safe. If you're always worrying and panicking and you're anxious, it's going to be much harder for you to go to the depths of your psychology and your being to let that go. Now, when you think about that from a performance standpoint, if you're an entrepreneur that's shitting his pants because he doesn't know if he can afford his bills every single month and he's oversubscribed, then that's a puzzle. Sometimes we've had coaches come in and they're like, yeah, I've got this guy that comes in and, like, I've got a specialist for, I don't want to knock any service providers out here, right? But I've got a specialist for nutrition. I've got a specialist chef. I've got a specialist design team. I've got, a business mentor, and then I've got this magic mentor, and then I have this service going on and this service going on. So I'm right, okay. How many clients you got? 20.
Yeah.
What? Why have you got so much stuff? Well, I'm in charge. I'm I'm a business owner. It's like,
Yeah.
no. Business owners aren't how many people do you have. It's how can you be as resourceful as possible and get the results for your clients. Because if you get results for your clients, you'll always be in a job. You'll always build a business.
Yeah, of course.
And I think sometimes, particularly if you're new to business and perhaps a little bit naive, you get a lot of that noise, and you start looking to the outside world to come and save you.
Yeah.
But if I have that will come and save me. I have that.
Yeah.
That'll
You
come
just
and
add
save me.
more, and you add more. And
More
you add
complexity, more noise, and actually you're better off doing more with less because you'll be more focused and there'll be less things to manage. So it is really important, I think, whenever you're looking at picking a service provider or what it is that you need, it's understanding, okay, well, what's going to move the needle forward for my objectives? And if the objective is scaling revenue, so if sometimes we'll get somebody apply with us and they'll be like, I want to scale my business. Great. Have you got a business mentor? No. Go and get a business mentor first. Go and get really confident in your systems and your marketing, and you know what you're doing, and you've got cash coming in, and that's consistent. Then come to us.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to help you scale your business, because that's not what we're going to do. Now, we help your personal performance, and the biggest blocker to anyone scaling their business is themselves. So we help you move the needle on that. But if you don't know what you need to do, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I find that for us, we've always just done the right thing. And if we think financially it's not going to be the right fit for you yet, don't sign up now. Come back to it later. Or their objectives just aren't aligned as to what our coaching delivers, then we'll say, well, look, I don't think that's what you need right now. And that's okay. I think early on, if you're a service provider or if you're a coach, you're better off being really clear as to with the client, is this actually the right fit or is it not? And you're better off walking away and saying no or not now than just trying to bring it all on at once.
I think that's where probably, like, I know I'm like this and I think you're like this as well. And it comes from like the technology background and the sort of, there was like yesterday, like everybody that had the same mindset that spoke up for some reason had worked in software at some point. But I think we probably have the ability to look at things objectively. So like you said, if you're a coach and you're looking to outsource X, Y, Z, whatever it may be, what is the objective? And I think one useful thing you can do is, if you're a coach and you're on a call with, let's say, Graphic, and you are gonna want graphic design or web design service or whatever it may be, ask them, what am I going to get? What's my business going to get out of this? Like, if a business owner asked me that, if I sign up with you today, what is my business going to get out of it? I'd be over the moon. I'd be like, right, well, bam, bam. Like, but it's got to be objective. You've got to have an idea in your mind of what I want to get out of it. So, for example, like, we always get asked, because a lot of coaches, we work with a lot of top end coaches, so it's sort of changed over the time, where now they're definitely at the peak of a mentorship, whatever mentorship it may be, which means that they've been used to everything being financially objective. So if you spend this much money, you're going to get this amount of return. So we always get asked on sales calls, how much this is going to make me, how much money is this going to make me, and we're going to be able to get to this target. And we quite simply have to say, that's not the objective of this service. Firstly, you need to understand what your objective is. Like, why are you coming to us? Why are you on this call? Why have you booked this call? You obviously know what that is. But, for example, if you struggle and you want to put your prices up, having a better brand, having it feel more exclusive, having it being specifically tied to the audience, having the customers feel welcomed, which retains clients. If you want that as a goal, then this is the service for you. If you're expecting to join a graphic design or like an outsourced service, creative service, and you're expecting the person to go, oh, well, you're going to be able to add £4,000 worth of revenue on, that's not the objective. So that's just an example of sort of what you said there. Like, if somebody's coming to you for mental performance coaching or whatever it may be, do you understand why you're doing it? Are you at the point of business where you've had enough issues or enough hurdles or enough success to go, right, I now need to find my place in all of this rubbish? If you're not at that point, then it's not the right and it is just as much the potential client's responsibility as it is yours as the service provider to make sure that you both understand that it's not one or the other. It's not just the coach's job to come and go and make the decision, is this right for me? As a service provider, we're responsible as well. If you take somebody on that really isn't financially ready, or they're not emotionally ready, that can have quite a big detriment to them, their life, their business, and you're ultimately responsible for that. It's not the coach's fault.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches don't want to refer out. We refer out all the time.
Mm.
We refer out. I mean, we've sent you guys loads of clients. It's like,
Mm.
look, you have these specific problems. Go speak to CrossFit.
Mm.
They do all of our stuff, and that's cool. And I think sometimes as well, I've actually sent a lot of coaches to therapists because they don't have a performance problem.
Mm.
They're looking at clinical depression.
Yeah.
They're looking at eating disorders. They're looking at suicidal thoughts.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, I've coached many people with suicidal thoughts, and throughout the TMP process, they've come up. That's not something that it sounds scary, but it's actually just the mind trying to solve a problem. But if I'm in a place where I think, you know what, even if we put the psychological foundations, that's not what's going to move their performance forward. They actually need a mental health practitioner, and we prefer to send them out and go, you're better off with that, because that's going to serve you in that moment. So when you have that reputation of, well, they always do the right thing and they always deliver, that spreads quick.
Yeah.
That spreads really, really quick. And for us, 70-80% of our business still is referrals.
Mm.
We're still trying the marketing stuff, but
yeah,
right now I kind of have to turn it off. I need a few more boots on the ground to fulfill that. But yeah, I've got one final question for you, mate. And you've been a partner for us for a couple of years now, so I want you to try and delete TMP. I want you to delete us as an organisation. Delete me. Kyran doesn't exist within this. But what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had that, how would you know?
For me, it's everything's around. It's all around consistency. So for me, like we talked about the meaning of the word total and mental performance before as individual words. I believe for something to be complete, for something to be total, for something to be at the top of its game, you've not only got to do it well. That's only half of the success. You've got to do it well for a long period of time. And for me, that's what total mental performance means. It's being able to deliver the utmost quality for the longest period of time.
I love that.
If I can, that's the simplest way I can say it. But I think that's what I'd say. It's the same when it comes to brands. Like I think it was Ollie actually who asked me on a podcast. I think it was like, what makes a good brand for you? And it's always the brands that have been in your eye in the households for the longest period of time. If as a business owner, you should find it easy to appreciate that. If you've seen a brand that has been at the top of the game forever, that's hard to do. As a business owner, we should appreciate that.
I love that. Well, mate, look, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for being in our corner and all the hard work that you've done for TMP. We've got some exciting projects coming up, which by the time you've heard this podcast, I suspect a couple of them will be landing. So
hopefully
keep an eye out. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.